Good evening. I have 7 o'clock, and I'll call the meeting to order and ask the clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Greg David,
Present.
Mr. Tyler Dean,
Here.
Miss Emily Hamburg,
Here.
Mr. Justin Smith,
Here.
and Mr. John Welch, who I believe is absent. And you have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you. This evening, we had Father Terry Hedrick scheduled to lead us in prayer, but he called me about an hour ago and said he was not well, so we'll just take a moment of silent prayer. Amen. Please join me in Pledge of Allegiance, American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This item is to determine agenda additions. Are there any agenda additions to consider? Hearing none, we'll go on to the consent agenda. It contains only the minutes of the October 7th, 2022 regular council meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Dean. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. The record show that Mr. Welch has come to the council meeting. Moving on to item 7A. This is approval of appropriation ordinance, and this reporting period includes $56,000 in bond costs for issuance fees, $100,000 in infrastructure improvements, and $38,000 for monthly trash fees. Is there a motion to consider the appropriation ordinance 2219?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith,
I'll make a motion to approve appropriations ordinance 22-19.
Second.
motion by Mr. Smith and second by Ms. Hamburg. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item 8 is update on Woodlawn Construction, and Mr. Patrick Herman from Garver Engineering is here to give us an update on the Woodlawn expansion. Mr. Herman.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I'm Patrick Herman with Garver.
Can you hear on the mic?
How's that? Is that better? Okay.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Thank you. So I'll be filling in for Mr. Dakota Zimmerman for the duration. As we all know here, Dakota's moving on down to Texas, and we all wish him the best, wish his family the best. So with that being said, I've got a slideshow here we can go through, and then I'll stand for questions. If I can get this to work. Uh-oh. Here we go. So first off, a safety statement here, just real quick. Proper PPE, personal protective equipment, should be worn at all times. Hard hat, reflective vest, boots, a lot of times gloves, safety glasses. So we should be, sorry, I'm going to pull this a little closer. Here we go. We should be aware of our surroundings, both the residential traffic and the construction vehicles alike. We've got construction vehicles passing in and out of the construction zone here. and we just need to keep an eye out for everybody, and it has just a little bit of caution goes a long way in these scenarios. So moving on. So the social media and the website, this is proven to be a really fantastic tool, and we're using it on a daily or weekly basis, and it's really working out good. Oftentimes we get information the same day, and we can react, the city can react, and hear what's going on, some of the concerns and issues that's going on with the project. So it's a fantastic tool here. So working day progress, we've got 49% of the work complete. We've charged 181 days, and 30 days have been charged since our last meeting. It's a contracted 333 working day project with 40 cleanup days. Current activities, we've got grading and paving operations at 45th Street, as well as areas south of the railroad tracks. The second base layer of asphalted concrete is being installed between 39th and 45th Street. The water and sewer, the permit for the railroad crossing has been attained, and should be begin soon. I don't have a date, but I'm hearing that it should start here pretty soon. So up here is just up on the top right, we have compaction equipment for the asphalt, and back behind there, we've got the paving machine and an end dump truck. The end dump truck passes the asphalt into the to the paving machine. The paving machine gets it homogeneous and puts it down on a nice flat layer, and that compaction equipment comes back and compacts it down for you. So down there on the bottom right is we've got a milling machine, and rather than remove the asphalt in big chunks, they prefer to do it this way. It's time effective. Also, they oftentimes use these millings as a recyclable material. So it goes back into asphalt, what's known as wrap. So current activities, we've continued here. We've got some, looks like sidewalk going in. We'll do short sections, long sections, kind of depends on the area that they're working here. And over here on the right, we've got another good picture of the asphalt spreader and an end dump here working. And over here on the left, we've got a blade, and that's getting the subgrade down to the appropriate elevation, and getting it nice and flat to get ready for the base. Then they put down, I don't know if you can see or not, but over there on the bottom right, this Tensar fabric, and it's kind of a reinforcing for the subgrade in preparation for the base. And then they put aggregate base called AB3. They process that, go lay it down and compact it, much like the asphalt operation minus the paving machine. We've got another couple pictures here. This looks like the first of two asphalt base lifts that are going in over here on the left, and on the right there is just another picture of excavator hogging out the subgrade down to rough elevation grade. So, okay, project phasing. Currently we're in phase 2C, and that's the south half of 45th Street and the northeast corner of the 45th Street intersection with Woodlawn there. we're getting ready to move over to phase 2D, and that's where they're just going to, and I've got pictures here. It'll make more sense once I pull up the pictures, but we're going to be working on the north half of 45th Street. And so now we have phase 2E. And once again, I'll have another picture here for you to explain it, because pictures are worth 1,000 words. But basically, it's the west half of the intersection of Woodlawn and 45th Street. And we're going to have east and westbound traffic to the barricades at Woodlawn, and northbound traffic from 39th Street up through 45th Street. So here's where we are right now. This is the traffic flow that we have right now in phase 2C. Many of you have gone through this intersection. So that's where we're currently at. Here is, okay. Just a plan view of phase 2C. So they have pretty much completed the work on the southeast corner. And they're very close, if not done, with the southwest corner here in the shaded areas. And they have a little bit more work to do on the north areas here. So here's what phase 2D is going to look like. Once they get done with phase 2C, they're going to shift traffic down to the new pavement and start working on the north half of 45th Street. But the traffic flow is going to be very similar to what phase 2C looked like, just driving on different parts of the street. So here's what phase 2E looks like. So before, when I said we've got traffic in both ways up to the barricades, so that's going to allow traffic to access these businesses right here, the Dollar General and the restaurant there. And through phase 2E, it will be northbound traffic only through this section, but seems like it's going to be a short duration for phase 2E. And okay, so upcoming activities. First off, it looks like we might be, the contractor may be coming close to being a couple weeks behind schedule. So this is the point where we request another updated schedule, and we'll be doing that soon. Okay, so it's hard to read here, but more or less on line 22 there, you can see traffic to phase 2D is on October 12th. So we're a couple weeks behind here. So critical path moving forward, continuing to work on west and north portions of phase 2C. Then we're going to switch over to phase 2D. Some additional activities is going to be base rock and asphalt south of the railroad tracks. Begin working on the railroad utilities, directional drill operations for water and sewer. So what's next? Once again, phase 2C, phase 2D, and then working on shifting over to phase 2E. And what I'm being told is that phase 3 should be sometime spring of 2023. And I'll stand for questions.
Well, appreciate the update. Yeah, I do have a few questions. One is, what do you think the date is on phase 2D when we'll switch to phase 2D? All the traffic will be on the south side of 45th Street.
Yeah, I don't want to step on my words too much because it'll get me in too much trouble. But what I'm hearing is that it'll be a couple weeks between phase 2C and phase 2D. Richard? Yeah.
You're thinking maybe sometime about the first week in November?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. And then how long will phase 2E, is it planned to take? Because that's a new phase, right?
I haven't heard from Pearson exactly how long phase 2E is going to last. They have explained to us that it should be a shorter duration type of phase. But they haven't, like I said, they haven't given us an updated schedule yet. So we're going to be waiting for that to see.
Okay, so at one time we were talking about having this traffic going all four directions by the end of the year. Is that still going to happen, or what's the?
I certainly hope
thought of
so.
that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I didn't mean to cut you off. I certainly hope so. The good news is that with phase 2E, it's all concrete. So there's a little bit of a difference in the allowable temperatures that you can use, asphalt or concrete. Concrete, you can use clear into the winter as long as we have conditions. What you do to the concrete is
Right.
you have to treat it a little bit different. But asphalt, generally from my experience, somewhere around the middle to end of December is usually when the asphalt plants usually start shutting down.
Well, I think you probably have heard several of us and citizens have been concerned because there is a lot of dead time on the project through the last couple months. I have seen a lot of increased activity the last couple weeks, and I appreciate that. But so it's getting concerned that we may not be making these dates that we had said earlier that we were targeting to make. So it's a bit of concern to many folks in the city. So
I understand the concern, and I'm right there with you. The sooner we get done with especially phase 2, the better. And unfortunately, I'm not in control of Pearson's activities, and how they staff the project. But like you said, the good news is that we have seen a huge increase in production here. We're seeing a lot of work done. So I think, some of the pressure that they've heard from the citizens in the city, and I think they're hearing that doubled with the fact that we're coming to the end of the construction season. So,
okay, I appreciate that. So, and I know you're just jumping into this, and Dakota's been taking care of this for a while, but it would be helpful for us if you would come with target dates already established, like 2D. It's behind schedule. So what's the recovery target date and that kind of thing? It would be helpful. It's a great deal to know that. Okay.
Understood. Okay.
Any questions from council members?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that was going to be my question is does Pearson know when we have city council meetings, and do they know when you need the information so that you can present us with an updated schedule?
I don't know if they're aware of when the city council meets, but I'll tell you this is I'll do whatever I can to make sure that we have an updated schedule. One of the rules here is that we have to go off of the schedule that we have until it reaches 2 weeks. And up until this point, we haven't reached that point to where it is 2 weeks behind. So that's kind of the gap that we're seeing right now. So that's going to be probably the first order of business at our next progress meeting is asking for a new schedule. So
Sounds good. Thank you.
yeah.
Any other questions? Well, I appreciate the update and look forward to continued progress on this on this project. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Next item on the agenda is citizen concerns, and I have a lot of cards here, 8. So just so we all are on the same page, there's a 3-minute limit on talking to council, and we're going to be really fairly strict about that today because of so many. We will be spending probably the next 30 minutes listening to all the folks and their concerns. So please, when you come to the podium, speak into the mic. Please state your name and your address for the record, and then I will start the clock. And if you hear the timer goes off, I'll try to let you wrap up. But if you don't wrap up quick enough, I may need to cut you off. But I apologize for that in advance. But with so many, it's just we're going to be spending a lot of time with folks. So it's just an unusual evening, but that's the way it is sometimes. So first on the agenda, first card I have is Rosemary Wood.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Rosemary Wood, and I live on 47 North Hillcrest Street, or Avenue, depending on who you ask. I am here to, I guess I emailed and I've spoken with City Mayor, Mr. Thatcher, is that correct? Lasher, thank you. I am really new to the area. My husband and I moved here on March 30th, and so we're really behind the gun as to what's going on internally in Bel Aire. So I said I was going to come. I had COVID, couldn't come. A lot of remodeling, couldn't come. And I also am newly employed, which I am really happy about. I did give you guys a little bit of a brief packet in regards to my current position, which I hope in the sake of time, because it is a mere introduction right now, that you would read it and hopefully you would call me back, because I am presenting at other cities, also to the county, about Nonprofit Go, which I'm very proud of. We're just presenting and wanting to let you know the importance of the work we're doing. Now back to my being a resident here of Bel Aire. I have had wonderful conversations with utilities, Melissa, and getting to know people. I have not had the pleasure. I think I talked to you, Mr. Mayor, once on the phone, and I have not had the pleasure of introducing myself. I am very active. I'm a citizen who has been active in the last 40 years in politics as a citizen, but I come here with that in mind, knowing that I'm behind the gun. I want to just tell you a couple of steps that's happened to me in regards to the voting on what's going on in Arthur Heights. Still don't know whether or not we're supposed to get some things happening there, our street repaved, and still have not heard back. Don't know anything. This is back in July, I believe. I went to a meeting, raised my hands 3 times, was dismissed, never got called upon. So that made me a little like maybe I should have shouted or something. I don't know. That meeting, though, made me really concerned. I went to a gentleman that's here in the audience. I believe his name is Ken. There was another lady for another division. This is what really made me concerned. I'm going to tell you my truth, and then hopefully, okay, I know that's my 3 minutes. Okay, this is really important. So I will close it off. What I don't understand is the process in which you're doing the special assessments. I heard the woman talk to, I believe his name is Ken, I don't know his name, ask why a lot wasn't included in the assessment. After 2 seconds of listening, he said, oh, that lot could be or should be. That to me sounds arbitrary. And I also believe I sent an email saying that maybe we should rethink how this is being done, the process. If you're in a development, perhaps everybody in the development should be included. And so it feels, I'm still really upset about this. Happened in July. Anyway, the mere introduction, I will be back. You will be seeing me. Hello. And I'm really happy to be here, by the way.
Okay.
So thank you. And
Thank
good
you.
luck, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. The next card I have is Mr. Chad, and forgive me if I butcher your name. It's Crinton.
Man, you got it. Crittenden. It's perfect.
Great.
Thank you. My name is Chad Crittenden. I live at 4130 Harding in Aurora Park. Been here about 7 years, and when we moved to Bel Aire, loved it. You know, everything was good, loved the neighborhood. And then about 3 years ago, the road went to complete crud. It is like limestone drywall dust within days every time we go through and treat the road or grade the road. And we live at the fork of Harding and Batten. So we're getting it from both sides. And we've complained. I know all the neighborhoods have been complaining about the roads for years, but nothing has changed. We've been to the meetings, been to the workshops. No different material has been tried. And I've even brought it up. Why? I know it's expensive to test materials, but why can't we try, like I mentioned years ago, of why can't we buy a little sample for 2 blocks and then another little sample for 2 blocks and another sample for 2 blocks and let the residents drive it for a month and see which works. But the only response we got is, here's your paved road, asphalt road for $3 million. And that's not what we wanted. We just wanted some different material. We don't want specials. We never did want, and that's why I moved here. But we had the vote. You know, we had the vote. You know, 51% approval is going to make this go forward. And you guys picked how we voted. And we went to all the hearings. We went to the workshops. And we were told, if someone doesn't turn their ballot in, that's an automatic no vote. And it should be, because if we have 100 residents here and only 5 vote, that's not a good representation of the community. So when I look at the numbers, when I get this letter Friday afternoon, it says 36 votes were in for opposition, 27 yes, and 16 no responses. And the city council chooses to move forward because that was it was close. You know, 36 to 27 is not close. But then you need to add that 16 more votes for no, because no response. And I know there's several people that didn't have a response because they knew that it was going to be a no. We had asked that at that last meeting right before the vote happened. So I don't understand how this is even needing to move forward on that. You know, our voice isn't being heard. You know, you guys picked the process. We voted on it. It was a landslide of no. But now you guys are saying, nope, we're going forward with it unless you get 51% saying you don't want it. Why do we need to vote again? I mean, even if we get a 70% that says no, are you going to say that's close and still make us pay for it? I mean, I don't understand what's happening. We elect you guys to be our voice, but it's not being heard. And I'm very, very frustrated with those things. You know, $170, that's a lot of money. When we voted it down, it was at 130. Now we're at 169 now when you're forcing upon us. Where'd this extra $39 a month come? You know, I was trying to build a shop on my property. I actually had to have my application in today to move forward with it, so I pulled it because $40,000 is more than my building was going to cost me. So how am I going to move forward with that? I don't even know if I want to stay here if I'm going to be forced into a lot of these issues like this. But 3 questions. If you guys have time to answer them, I'd appreciate it. But I just want to know why we don't have a voice. We made the vote. The no's won, but we're still being forced into something. Number 2, why the price hike up to $169 now? And what's the legal standing when the residents voted it down by a landslide, but now you're forcing it upon us?
Well, I don't believe we'd be able to answer your questions at this time, but we'll take those into consideration. Okay? Thank you.
Well, how would we get those responses, I guess? Because we got a timeline.
Mr. Mayor, I would just ask that you would the public comment period is for the public to respond at the podium, and no other comments can be made during that time. And then the mayor shall control the agenda, and anyone requesting the floor would need to approach the podium and ask the mayor to speak.
My question was, are we going to have an answer before this 20th day? And we're a little confused on when this vote's going to happen. And I guess, why do we have to have a vote? I don't.
Okay, so, sorry, your time is up and we need to move on.
Yeah.
Mr. Lasher, I assume you have those questions written down. Okay, we'll look at those questions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Mr. Logan Schrag.
I'm Logan Schrag, 4071 Harding Street. I'd like to take my first minute and let you go ahead and answer Chad's questions.
I'm sorry?
I'd like to take my first minute and let you answer Chad's questions, please.
We're not going to do that.
Well,
This is time for public comment. If you have
Sure.
comments to make, please make the comments and we will get those answers for Mr.
Okay, where should we find those answers in?
Mr. Lasher has those questions written down. We'll get them out to Mr.
So in a
Mr.
like
Chad.
mail format, where would we find? I'm just trying to understand because
Yeah.
a lot of people here are concerned about it. We just would like to
Yeah.
know.
Well, they're direct questions from Mr. Chad, so that'll be where it is. So,
Okay, so so like I said, my name's Logan. I lived on dirt roads most of my life and love living on a dirt road. And the Aurora Park roads are horrendous. Absolutely just completely unacceptable. I have 2 boys under 3 years old. When someone drives by, we can't be outside because of the dust. And we've asked for a lot of different questions, or excuse me, a lot of different options, but we've failed to really get any answers from the council or anyone. And one of my questions is that, is it true, a yes or no would be great here, is it true that a non-vote is a no vote? When the 16 non-responding, is that true that it was a non, is that accurate, or are we?
I don't know. I've never heard that before. So that's news to me tonight.
Okay, so were there anyone in the audience that heard me ask that question? So there's people that heard me ask the question. So is there
That may be. Apparently I wasn't in the meeting, so I don't know.
okay, well, Ty was in the
I
meeting,
can't
so maybe.
speak to that. Okay, so please go on with your.
So the second question is, how can you legally force this upon us when the majority of votes received were not in favor of the improvements?
Well, these sound like similar questions that Mr. Crittenden was.
That's why I
asking,
asked
so-
for an answer, yeah.
So
There-
we're not answering questions right now, okay? This is your time to comment, okay?
So what I would say is these improvements are a big deal because how can you expect someone in this neighborhood to afford this, especially a young family like mine? Like I said, 2 boys under 3, my wife stays at home, and this continues to add more stress to an already difficult financial situation. With fuel rising, the cost of goods rising, everything rising, this doesn't make it any easier for anyone in the crowd to be able to pay for that. I'm just continually baffled that an elected body like this would go against the vote of people, the money that was spent to send out, however much was spent to send everything out, and then we vote and our voice still is not heard. I want to know if, I think really the news sources would be very interested to know how the city is being run where the city doesn't have a voice. Because I think they'd be interested in it. It's not really a fair operation. I think that this is not a fair kind of deal that happened on how a normal election would happen. A normal election, if you vote, your voice is heard. If you don't vote, sorry you didn't vote, but whoever voted is the majority.
Thank you for your comments.
So I think I'll end with this.
Sir, your time is up.
Is the council willing to listen to the
Sir.
majority of the Aurora Park
Your time
residents?
is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Schroeder.
Hi, my name is Mark Schroeder. I live at 5101 East 39th Street North. This is going to sound like a broken record, but I have the same complaints. In good faith, we went along with your, what do you call it? Oh, I can't say the word right now. What was it? Petition. Thank you. Anyway, and clearly the no's were greater than the yeses. And no matter how you work the figures, percentage wise, no's were more, even though it wasn't the 51%. But that concerns me, and I don't want to just repeat comments that everybody else has made. But even in the petition, it clearly states that more than half the people have to be in favor of that to go ahead. So to do what this most recent letter is saying that you plan to do, you're basically throwing away the results of the petition. And I'm puzzled by that. One other comment I wanted to make is there was a comment in the letter about being fair to all citizens, and that the amount of money that you're going to expect us to pay is in line with what everybody else pays. Therefore, should be okay. And I think you're always failing to realize that people that buy property in a new area have the option of deciding if they can afford to do that. The specials are there ahead of time. We've all lived here a long time, and we bought in understanding years ago that there were no specials. And now to have to come up with that it may be fair, but it's altogether different. It's a whole different story trying to come up with that money. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I add one more thing?
Certainly.
I'd just like to ask that when you get to section 11A in your meeting, that you would seriously consider not voting for that. Deny it. Keep in mind, you're sort of voting for us. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next, we have Miss Carolyn Gozelman.
I'm Carolyn Gunzelman. I live at 5029 East 39th Street North. I'm here to speak about you paving the roads in Aurora Park. I have attended many of your meetings. I actually was at the workshop where Mayor Benaj first suggested that the petition be done to see if we wanted to have our roads paved. I was left that meeting distraught at the bias that the council had in the discussion of allowing us to vote, the discussion of how you could make it happen anyway. And obviously that attitude still prevails, that you can make it happen anyway. We, in good faith, participated in the petition. We were told at the meeting, and I'm thinking it was on the card that we returned as a no vote, that a non-response was a no vote. We were told at that meeting by this gentleman that if the estimates came back more than what was in the petition, that the process would start over. That we would have another option if the price went up to say no. So now we said no, the price is going up. We don't get the option anymore to say no. You're taking that from us. That's city government at its worst. I just talked at one point about the number of retired citizens in our community in Aurora Park. 60% of our people are retired, and are not just retired, but have been living on Social Security for years. They barely have the money to do the repairs to their homes. And now you want them to come up with $169 a month. That's drugs. That's food for some of the people in our community. I just find it so dismissive of you to think that it's not an issue for real people trying to survive in today's world, in the economic problems that are going on in the world. I urge all of you to vote no on this resolution. We don't want to pay for paved roads. It's couldn't be clearer. And I just ask you to vote with integrity. You're here to serve. And that's what we're asking you to do, to serve us and abide by our wishes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sylvia Forte.
I believe it's pronounced Fort. My name is Sylvia Fort. I live at 4072 North Harding. And I too was at the meeting and heard that. We did not return our card and we called City Hall. They said, well, you don't have to return it if you're going to vote no. We were sitting on the fence. However, this new issue goes totally against our grain. Not getting the whole picture is what I feel like is the problem. We have to wonder what has changed since we did this. What has changed since the petition failed? Are there some external factors driving this? Just what is going on? Obviously, the prices are different, and we have a lot of suspicion, and we think that should be addressed when you vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Kevin Connell.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Kevin Connell. I'm at 4061 North Parkwood. My questions and concerns basically echo most of everybody's comments that have come forth tonight. And with that, most of them have been addressed and aired. And I would just like to, in consideration of the majority of the people that are opposing this, urge all of you to vote no on continuing with this. Clearly based on the opposition that we have, both in the numbers and the people that have spoken here tonight, I encourage you to vote no and not continue with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Martin Cooey. Am I saying your name correctly, sir?
It's unusual. My name is Martin Cooey. I live at 4156 North Baton, also in Aurora Park. I'm a new resident in that I just completed building a house on Cecil Carrier's old lot. And I was not aware that we had this issue with the road and that this would be going on. I'm here to maybe suggest, as a retired quality engineer and manufacturing engineer at Beach Aircraft and Learjet, I've always spent my career looking for solutions. My question to the council and the mayor, has there been any inclusion on the citizens to look for alternatives, or is this just something you're going to bring to us and vote? Because I'm a problem solver, the Six Sigma type, I would like to suggest that we sit down and form a committee and possibly get everybody together to discuss an alternative. I'm retired. I've got an issue with $170 a month. I guarantee you. Not a rich man, put all my money in the house. There's a product called Permazyme. Okay, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it. It's a soil solidifier that you mix with 20% clay. It costs $6,000 a mile for a 2-lane road. I suggest what Chad is talking about. Is this something we can form a committee with a few of us to go along with the planners or the city folks and maybe look at alternatives? Because we're beating our head against a brick wall and we don't need to be adversaries. We need to work together. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying.
Okay. There's others. It's called a structozyme. It all has to do with enzymes, positive and negative particles attaching together. This stuff, when it's done, it actually is a strong nearly as strong as concrete. The dust level will go way down at a whole lot less cost. So I'd propose if I could get a hold of the city, maybe we could put something together.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next we have Mr. Melvin Harms.
Thank you. I'm Melvin Harms. I live at 4172 North Baton. I also have recently moved into the area. I built a new house right next to Marty's house. And that was one of the drawing factors into the neighborhood was no specials, no HOAs. You know, you could just live there and you don't have all the dictation or control of the area. I realized when I moved in, there was a dirt road. I was okay with that. I was not real pleased with the way the road was being maintained. I thought there were better options or a better way they could do it. Seems like, especially recently, just real recently, they used to do like a buildup rock on there, that powdery stuff. And then they would come over it with a gravel. Now lately they've just put on, doesn't even seem like any of the rock hardly. It's just powder that they're putting on, and it's just a constant dust plume up in the air. And if that was, I mean, I see over here, there's new construction over here. They have these trucks that have a water truck. Just spray some water on it would settle the dust. It would probably help pack the soil a little bit better as well, because they usually try to put that on right after it rains. They grade the road, they put it on after it rains, and supposedly they're thinking, I don't know what they're thinking, but that would pack down better. If they would want to, invest in a truck, it would probably be a lot less expensive than having to do gravel on the whole Aurora Park area constantly. I mean, just to make it water down, I'm into the option of let's look at some other options that aren't going to cost us $3 million. I know there's other options. You're saying it's going to be the same as what these other additions are. Those other additions have curbings. They're paved. You wanted to last it 20 years. Oliver over there, I'm sure that's lasted quite a while. We don't need that type of a road in a subdivision that already has a sign, no trucks. We have cars driving through there, and it's mainly just residents that are driving in and out, not constant driving up and down all day long like you do on Oliver. We have a whole lot less traffic. We don't need a $3 million elaborate road system on a road system that we already are. We were content with road gravel if it was maintained, and I felt like the grader system was a little on the not as qualified as he should have been to grade it properly, to keep it on I don't know, I'm not a great expert, but I've lived on a lot of dirt roads, and I just know they can grade them, crown them, and it usually helps with the washboarding. We don't need new dust every time it starts washboarding a little bit, but that's my
Thank you.
2 cents.
Those are all the comment cards I'd received. I don't know if there are any other citizens that want to speak that haven't spoken, but if there aren't that haven't given me a card, I will entertain that. Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay, we'll move on to council member reports. So, Ms. Hamburg.
Thank you, Mayor. Attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting earlier this month. Attended the League of Kansas Municipalities conference up in Overland Park. Frankly, I was questioning if that was going to be a good use of my time and resources. And it really was. Had good conversations and learned quite a bit that will directly benefit some of the issues we're going to discuss or come before us. Attended the Fall Festival on Saturday. It was great weather. Incredible turnout for the car show. And I'm not going to start thanking all of the community partners and vendors because there's too many to mention, but thank you to all of them who supported it and volunteered for it. And I'll just end with my family and I enjoyed those new bleachers on Saturday. So thank you very much to FedEx for donating those to the city. If you didn't know, that's several $1,000s worth of bleachers that they donated to us. So just want to publicly thank them. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Dean.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a few things here. I also attended the Kansas League of Municipalities Conference last weekend with a lot of other cities from around the state. I agree with Ms. Hamburg. It was well worth the time and learned a lot and did a lot of good networking with other city officials and staff. Also attended the K254 corridor meeting, which included several community updates, and I'm proud that Bel Aire continues to grow and was recognized by a lot of the communities as such. That was good. Also, along with the mayor, attended the Kansas Economic Outlook, which is put on every year by WSU. It was a good event, not necessarily great news, but it was a good event. And I thank Wichita State and their sponsors for continuing to put that on every year. Also, this afternoon, I attended a Central Kansas Manufacturing Network event in Salina. Calvin Reed with KDOT, he is the Director of Engineering and Design, spoke on topics including the Ag Transportation Program, alternative delivery of projects, and the bill, which we all have heard so much about. Also, which was interesting, was a tour of Burkamp, which is a company that provides equipment based out of Salina, manufactures equipment for chip seal, slurry seal, and microsurfacing. So it was interesting to see the process that they go through to build those machines that help cities throughout the country and actually throughout the world to maintain their roads. And that is my report.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. David.
No report. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Councilmember Hamburg and Councilmember Dean, I also attended the League of Kansas Municipalities Conference in Overland Park on the 9th. It was great to connect with lots of other city officials and staff and learn about their perspective and their issues. Attended a really interesting session on a developer's perspective for residential development. And it was interesting to hear a developer talk a little bit about the economics of doing residential development right now and some of the challenges that they're facing with material costs. And what he explained is the material costs of building a house in a number of cases are actually outpricing what they can sell the house for, which is creating a really interesting dynamic, especially with more affordable, starter level homes. And so it was good to understand that dynamic. We have a lot of residential development here in Bel Aire. He also talked about the state starting some new programs that are actually doing some tax incentives for residential development that's likely to make some of those economics come back into their favor. And so it'll be interesting to watch how that unfolds here in Bel Aire. I also attended the Fall Fest on the 15th. It was a fantastic day, great weather, great event, record turnout on the car show, and a big thanks to everyone that made that happen. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
No report, Your Honor.
Thank you. We're on the mayor's report. So I also attended the Kansas Economic Development Conference at Century 2. A lot of interesting perspective and future of our local economy. There's a 100+ page book of details for that conference, so I'm not going to try to replicate all of that. There's just too much there. Overall, there is not a lot of growth expected for the next year. Housing demand, while slowed down, is still very strong, with inventory being about 1 month. For comparison, real estate normally sees about 3 months of inventory. Energy is going to be a big challenge. Natural gas is about double the price it was a year ago. Coal prices are about 4 times higher. About 70% of our electricity is generated using coal or natural gas, and that makes changes depending on the price and availability. The other 30% of our electricity is mostly windmill, but also some nuclear and solar enter into that mix. Job outlook remains strong, but Kansas continues to lose population and jobs. We are down about 5,000 in population, about 20,000 in jobs from our pre-pandemic levels. Wichita is expected to lead the state in job growth if we can attract the people. Airline industry continues to struggle to recover. Flights to Mexico have recovered from pre-pandemic levels, but almost all other segments continue to be underperforming. If you've flown lately, you've noticed aircraft are full. Staffing is a huge problem for airlines. Pilots by law have to retire at 60. Additionally, the training bar has been raised to 1,500 hours, so there are fewer pilots. Airlines have adjusted by flying larger aircraft and fewer flights. This gets the most passengers flight miles, but it remains lower than the pre-pandemic levels. There has been a huge shift away from smaller jets in the last few years as airlines adjust to staffing issues. So the overall takeaway from the conference is cautious optimism for the local area. October 7th, I attended the K254 Corridor Development Association, as Mr. Dean had reported. We had anticipated that the Garver team was going to make a presentation about their corridor management, the general development of the corridor management plan, but they have not been able, that team has not been able to finalize terms on with KDOT for a contract. And that was kind of a short fuse anyway, so it probably was a little bit optimistic to think we were going to get there. I also attended the League of Kansas Municipalities, as Ms. Hamburg and Mr. Dean and Mr. Smith have also attended. There are a lot of small things there I picked up at this conference, but I did attend one outbreak session on economic development and got some really good customized information on Bel Aire. I will be using that in future discussions on economic development. October 11th, I attended the WAMPO TBD meeting. That's the Transportation Policy Board meeting. We heard from the Federal Housing, not Federal Housing, Federal Highway Administration on safe systems approach. And they have set a goal of 0 traffic deaths. So that's pretty optimistic to get 0 traffic deaths. Of course, would not likely to ever occur in the near future, but they're pushing for safer road designs to reduce traffic deaths. They've specifically mentioned expanded use of roundabouts. Double diamond interchanges would also fit into that consideration. We don't see any of those in this part of the state, but we see those quite a bit up in Johnson County, and they're quite interesting. A little confusing, but quite interesting. So this was also followed by a KDOT presentation on the same issue for safer highways and streets. While no funding opportunities were discussed, the fact that these concepts are being discussed at this level indicates funding opportunities are on the horizon. On October 12th, I attended the UAC meeting, the Utility Advisory Committee. They track rainfall for Bel Aire, and the surprise is that in spite of the dry weather this last summer, Bel Aire is still up 2 inches above average for rainfall this year. A lot of that has to do with the heavy rains we had in June. So they just kind of hang on, don't filter out yet. So October 15th, I attended the Fall Fest, as many council members did. Really impressed with the 100 cars entered in the car show, largest ever. Much appreciation of the rec center staff as well as city staff, other city staff, Bel Aire Lions Club, Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce, and for all those who worked to make that event a great success. The Glenwood Homeowners Association held another workday this last Saturday, October 15th, to clear brush along the fence line adjacent to the power line clearance at the east side of that development. Always good to have neighbors help keep the city clear of hazardous brush and other overgrowth. These workdays keep our city safe and looking very presentable. A reminder, the next Coffee with the Mayor is this coming Saturday, October 22nd at 10 a.m. at Los Canados restaurant at 45th and Woodlawn. They don't open until 11, but this will be a great opportunity to talk about citizen concerns and have lunch afterwards at Los Canados. And I hope we fill the restaurant. Please continue to support Los Canados and Dollar General. They need our business during this construction time, especially now that neither one has access from 45th Street, only from Woodlawn. So at that, I will ask for our city attorney for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended a public works presentation that the county held, the county public works held, and it was neat to hear how they appreciate the relationship and the partnership that they have with several cities in our area, but particularly Bel Aire. County Public Works feels like they can come and do work and know that Bel Aire is easy to work with and will have interlocal agreements that are reasonable. And also the partnerships regionally with REAP, and they do feel that the region is poised to get a lot of the funding for roads, bridges, et cetera, because of the relationships here and the partnerships within the county. Again, they highlighted Bel Aire. Our planning and zoning director wanted me to let you know that one thing that our code enforcement department is dealing with is people discharging water from their sump pumps onto the public right away. That creates organic growth, which creates a safety hazard for slipping. And as it gets colder, that can be an ice issue. That is a violation of our nuisance code. It's unlawful to discharge any water from sump pump or any drain in the city. And that could create some notices. So they're working on that, particularly here in Central Park. We've had issues with the drainage going into the sidewalk, and people are going to be notified of that. You need to work with your plumber or lawn person to redirect that sump pump drainage. And finally, the code enforcement department has gotten all the applicants for the sidewalk program collected, all the applications collected, and anticipates going out for bids in the next couple of weeks.
Very good, thank you. Move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Construction continues around town. Council approved the replacement of some water mains. And so I wanted to let the citizens know on Auburn between Cox and 45th Street, as well as Clarendon from 41st to 39th, and then the houses along 39th from Clarendon to Auburn will be water will be shut off tomorrow for that main replacement. They're hoping to have everything back on tomorrow evening if everything goes well, but if they run into problems, there may be some delays on Auburn. And so the Clarendon shutoff would not happen until the next day. But the company that's doing that, UMC, has notified all the homes that will be affected to let them know what's happening today. They notified them today, so they'll be aware tomorrow. And then just make sure they're following us on social media, because we're putting posts out on Facebook and Twitter of the progress. So
You're sending out text as well, right?
Yes, if you sign up for text,
I
then
got a
we can
text
send
message about
text.
it today, so.
Yep,
We'll
that's
have one.
another way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mayor.
Very good, thank you. We'll move on to ordinance resolutions and final actions. So the first item is we've had a lot of attention about today, so talk about the resolution calling. So this is concerning Aurora Park and the possibility of paving the roads and drainage improvements. So at our September 13th workshop, council heard the results of petitions received to pave the gravel streets at Arthur Heights, Aurora Park, and Cozy. Arthur Heights overwhelmingly voted no, with only 25% favoring the pavement. Cozy appears to have received the petitions needed to pave the road, so they will be working with them to make that happen. And Aurora Park was closer with no real direction. As a result, we discussed how state statutes allow for public improvements to take place without a petition process. So the action tonight starts that process for Aurora Park. And Kevin Cowan is from Gilmore and Bell is here to explain what actions will occur and answer questions. And I'm sure we'll have plenty to discuss as well from our input tonight.
Good evening, Kevin Cowan with Gilmore and Bell. A very good summary of sort of what has happened and what is before you this evening, which is a resolution that is a starting point. It states that the council is considering these improvements, and pursuant to state statute, the next step would be calling for and giving notice of a hearing. So if you've looked at the resolution, it's fairly short. The notice of hearing is more detailed, has a description of the project, estimated cost, all the things that would be in a petition. And the notice of the hearing would be published once a week for 2 consecutive weeks. Hearing would then be held, and After the hearing, the governing body may consider an intent resolution where they make findings that it's advisable to proceed with the improvement, estimated cost, method of assessment, all of those details. That resolution would then be published one time, and that publication starts a protest period, 20-day protest period, during which a majority of both the record owners of property and the owners of record of a majority of the area. So that first part of the test is people. And we talked about this, I think, at the last meeting. If you have a husband and wife that are joint tenants at a property, that's two owners. And so if one of them were to protest, that's one out of two signing a protest. And that's how you sort of get the numerator and denominator in terms of who are the owners of record, what's a majority for purposes of protest. And then the second part, again, similar test, but you're looking at who owns property in a majority of area. In that case, both property owners would have to sign a petition, protest petition, to protest for the entire area. You can't have one property owner speaking for the entirety of the area of the property that more than one person owns. So again, I'll stop there, but this is the beginning, potential beginning of a process, and there are more steps, and it's going to take a couple of months, and there would be more opportunity for public comment and consideration. But that's what this would do tonight. Just start it, publish twice, have a hearing in a couple of weeks, and continue consideration if that's the will of the governing body.
Any questions for Mr. Cowan? Hearing none, I think we should have some discussion here, especially in light of some of the comments made tonight. I was particularly interested in the comment made by Mr. Cooey about possibly putting together a citizens task force. I know that our public works people have worked over the years trying different materials on that road. I know that comments heard tonight that hasn't been happening, but I do know that they have told us they have tried many different materials. But I'm always open to other ideas, and so I'm willing to discuss that, consider that if that's the will of the council. It might be, maybe there's a solution there, I don't know. Anyone?
I'll throw my hat in at the moment.
Okay.
I am not against other solutions either. If somebody has a good one, I'm willing to try it. However, I think at this point, this whole process has become so screwed up. We did it wrong from day one, I think, that we need to go through this hearing and go through the steps. And if there's a 50% of the people that sign the petition as no, that's a positive action they have to take to say no, then it'll be no. And we did that for Hillcrest. We got enough people on Hillcrest that said, no, we don't want it. And we said, fine, okay, we won't do it. But we can't get a consensus from the Aurora Park people. No, we did not. We got some no's, we got some yeses, and we got a bunch of people that didn't care enough to send their cards back. And I never, wait a minute.
Hold on.
I never heard anybody say that if you didn't send your card back, it was a no vote. Well, if he said it, then I think he was misspoken.
Well,
and that's,
don't
it's
see all
past
that
now,
data.
and I think we should just throw all that away and start over and do this. Well, that's all we've been doing for 3 years since I've been here anyways, hashing about Aurora Park. I hear this every couple of months. We complain that roads are dusty, but we don't want dusty roads, but we don't want to pave the roads, but we don't want to do this. We don't want to lower the speed limits. All I hear is, no, we don't want to do anything. So, but we don't want dust. So something has to change. I think this is a way to get change. And while we're doing this, we can certainly look at other things that might work and be cheaper. I'm not against that.
No, David. I'm sorry. We've already had our public comment period. This is not a workshop. This is a city council meeting. And workshops, we have more interactive type discussions, but not in a formal meeting. We don't.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
I of course always want to consider other solutions too. I guess the concern that I have is this has been a topic at a number of workshops over the last several years, and I feel like we've really tried to exhaustively explore what are all the other different options for this road. And I think we even had a professional study done on this road. And my recollection from all the discussion that we've had every time we've been through this is there's basically two options. You leave the road the way it is, and our staff who are not experts at gravel roads, because we have not very many of them in the city and it's not our primary method of road surface, are going to do the very best they can to maintain them, which is what they're doing today. And so we can just leave it as it is and acknowledge that it is going to be what it is. And we're going to constantly be fighting the dust. We're going to be constantly be fighting the washboarding. We're going to be constantly digging out the ditches. The rest of the citizens of Bel Aire are going to pay a little bit more to be maintaining those roads because we're paying to maintain a grader. We're paying to maintain that expertise on staff. They're having to grade those roads twice a month. That's attention that the other roads don't get. That's option one. Or option two, the only other permanent solution that I've heard is to pave it. And I think that's why we're here trying to figure out if there's a majority of people that are opposed to paving it or not, is because in my opinion, for the greater good of the city, it's a better solution to have the paved road because it gets the rest of the city out of the maintenance of these gravel roads. If there's not a strong majority that will oppose that, then we should just do that. We should just pave the road. If there is a strong majority that opposes that, that's why we have this statutory process for the petition that says, no, we're not going to go do that. That's kind of my view on it.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. David.
I don't have the background that my colleagues here do, so I don't understand all the going-ons over the last few years. But it seems to me, at least recently, that's a pretty clear no, we want to stay with gravel roads vote, and especially with the misinterpretation that evidently happened. So I don't see why we wouldn't at least table this until we could have a second citizens panel study. That seems like at least a good compromise for all sides, and try it one more time. Thank you.
I don't think we ought to table it. I'm sorry, were you gonna? I don't think we ought to table it. I think we should move forward with it. And the citizens of Aurora Park know what they need to do. And I believe Ty could supply you with the form for the petition that says, no, we want it. And if you get the 51%, that'll kill it. We don't even have to have the hearing if you get the petition signed before the hearing. I don't care. I just want to decide the issue and go on with other problems. That's what I want.
So I think that no, I'm sorry, we've already had.
I've seen both sides, and I see everybody's trying to do the best thing here. And the only thing that happened in this process is that
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor has to grant the floor for someone to speak.
Okay, Dr. Bro, would you, being as you didn't speak earlier, would you come to the podium and introduce yourself and I'll give you the 3 minutes.
everybody tried to do the right thing here.
Sir,
'cause
please
I've been on
state your
both
name.
sides.
You've been granted the floor. We just
Oh.
want to keep some sense of order. You've been granted the floor by the mayor, and that's the right way to do it. If you would please state your name and address and then proceed with your comments.
I'm Gary Bro. I live at 4046 North Harding. Everybody tried to do the best thing here. And the problem came when they thought not sending it in meant no. And that's a way of voting if you're told that. The majority of the people have said no that way. And it's nobody's fault. It was inadvertent because it didn't say in the paperwork that don't send it in means no, but they were told it. And so they voted no that way. So nobody wants it. I wanted it. So I'm on the other side here too, and I really wanted it. But I was glad to see it. Maybe it was still alive again, but it's not. And so nobody wants it. Let's not do it. I think I said in February, do it. Find out if we're going to do it or not. But I'm going to tell you, nobody wants it. Nobody's ever wanted it in 20 years over there. And at least the majority hasn't. But it's time to move on to how to fix the ditches and the roads. Everybody did a good thing here. Just one little thing messed it up. And that's all did it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate what Councilmember Welch and Smith are saying with the continued maintenance of this. At our September 13th workshop, I really wanted to see a clear majority one way or the other, and we didn't get that, unfortunately. But at least from my perspective, the burden is on the yeses to have met the threshold, and they didn't meet the threshold. So while we have statutory cover to move forward with this petition, I don't think that would be the right thing. We could table it. We could look at other ideas. And I know that's been done in the past, but it seems as of right now, the majorities are no. Those 16 that didn't turn it in, I find it hard to believe that there wouldn't be at least 4 no's in there if we had gotten a response one way or the other based on the belief that a non-response was a no. So that's where I'm, and it isn't, this isn't $20 or $50 a month. That is not an insignificant assessment to put on people, whether you're on a fixed income or not. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Dean.
Yeah, I kind of reiterate what Emily is saying. I kind of put myself in homeowners' shoes that are sitting in that neighborhood with those larger lots. And if I had built a house there and not expected specials, how I would be feeling about it. And so that's kind of the direction I went with it, is thinking about how I'd feel. And based on the fact that it seems like it was a no, when you consider the votes that are left, it does kind of feel like it's a little bit of a waste of time to move forward with this. I do agree with trying to find other solutions, and maybe someday after an exhaustive committee task force and there's some buy-in from the Aurora Park citizens that participate in that, maybe there could be a paved opportunity at some point in their future. I think a big part of it too is this is not just about paving roads and getting rid of dust. Like everybody said, it's a maintenance issue. It's a storm drain issue. So there's lots of layers to this problem. It's not just a simple, yeah, we're going to pave it. No, we're not. That's what we're voting on. But I kind of agree. It seems like there needs to be some more buy-in from that neighborhood to move forward in any direction. So that's my thoughts on it.
Any other discussion? Hearing what we've heard, my thought on this is that maybe we would be wiser to just table this and put together the task force that Mr. Cooey had suggested, and see if we can't let the citizens of Aurora Park hash out a solution that they're agreeable with. I think we probably need some staff on that committee as well. But that's going to be my recommendation. Obviously, I don't get to vote on this. It's really up to the council, but that's just my suggestion, hearing what I'm hearing. So
I don't think we should table it. I think we should either make a motion to approve it or deny it and get it done.
Okay, well,
Mr. Mayor?
I can't make the motion. Mr. David.
I'm just throwing that out there before anybody else does something.
I'll make a motion to deny a resolution calling and providing for the giving of a notice of a public hearing on the advisability of the making of a certain internal improvement in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, under the provisions of KSA 12-6A01, as amended and supplemented, and providing for the giving of notice of said hearing, and authorize the mayor to sign.
A second.
Motion by Mr. David and a second by Mr. Dean to deny the notice, giving a notice in hearing. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye.
I hear 3 in favor of the motion and 2 opposed, with Mr. Smith and Mr. Welch in opposition to deny. Am I stating that correctly?
That is correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
And I don't mind that this got voted down. I just thought it should be voted on.
Okay.
I think having this linger is not good for anyone. So
Right. I understand. Okay, so this is denied. We will not move forward with this. It's not an action item on the agenda tonight, and maybe it's a workshop topic. I don't know how we put together a committee to do that, but maybe a suggestion is maybe citizens would be interested in doing such a thing. Please let Mr. Lasher know that you're interested, and I will defer to Mr. Lasher to at least call together a committee to have that discussion. But I certainly believe we need to have some staff with their expertise on this, and I'm not going to say who that should be. I'll let you decide that, okay?
Mr. Mayor,
That can take as long as you want, okay? Yes, sir.
what do you have in mind for the scope of that task force?
To look at options for the dust issues in Aurora Park. And it's their area they're living in, and the suggestion was made that they do that, that they come in with options, and I would then let them look at those options and make suggestions.
So this is for the citizens to propose options, not for staff to study options. I just want to be clear.
It's citizen proposed options, but with staff involvement, because obviously the staff needs to know what they're suggesting and be able to give them feedback of what they know about those products, what they can learn about them, what their costs are, and what those options are. I just think we'd be remiss to not have that.
I just wanted to understand specifically kind of what the scope was.
That's
So
fine.
appreciate
I
that.
appreciate that. Okay.
I don't think we should have the staff involved at the beginning. I think this should be led by the people of Aurora Park, particularly Mr. Cooey, since he brought up a couple of new things I haven't heard about before. Find some solutions that will stabilize the dust and stabilize the road. I'll be happy with it if it only costs $6,000. I'd be thrilled. Okay. Okay.
Sir,
I'm just throwing
sorry,
out
we can't-
6,000,
you can't
you know,
speak
but
to it.
if it, we're spending more than that per year on it now. So if we could get a few years out of $6,000, I think everybody would be happy.
So please contact Mr. Lasher. He'll organize that, okay? Or at least get it started. He'll be the point person on it for now, okay? So moving on to item B, the developer of Cedar Pass is ready to begin construction of Phase 1 sewer. Garver has designed the sewer improvements for Phase 1 and solicited bids for the project. 4 contractors provided bids, with Apex being the low bidder. The cost of the improvements will be financed through a bond and spread as special assessments against the benefiting lots. And our city engineer, is she here? Oh, she is here. There she is here to explain the project and answer any questions.
So this will be the first phase of Cedar Pass, and I have worked with the engineer. Typically, we do the water, the sanitary sewer, and the storm sewer all together. That is my preferred method because we don't have 3 different contractors going every which way and everybody pointing fingers on what has or has not been done. I did express this to the engineer, and they requested that we continue to go ahead with just the sanitary and sewer improvements because that is what is ready at this time. The other projects, the water and the storm drainage, are not ready, and they will not be ready.
I think we need to leave that door open since this is a public meeting. Otherwise, they're locked out.
Yeah, you can't close it all the way.
Can you close it some of the way?
You can.
They're
Can, I think you can close it some of the way. Okay. Sorry, it's real hard to hear.
Oh, totally. I totally understand. I can just go ahead and start over if you would like, or.
Yes, please, because I
Okay.
missed part of what you said.
Sure. So typically we do the water, the sanitary sewer, and the storm sewer all at once. It prevents 3 different contractors on site. It prevents people from pointing fingers at the other contractor if any issues do arise. That is my preference. I did communicate that to the engineer. They did assure me that at this time, the only thing that is available ready for bid in the next several months is the sanitary sewer. So we will only have 1 contractor on the project at the time, if in the future, in a few months, we get the sanitary or the storm sewer and the water together. We're hoping to bid those at the same time, but depending on timing, it may be one and then another. But I did stress quite a bit that one contractor on the job at a time, if at all possible.
Is there an urgency to get this done?
The developer is asking to start moving forward with it. So yes and no, in their eyes, definitely. So the water, we have been experiencing long wait times from KDH&E as far as review periods. I'm not sure if it has been sent into KDH&E yet, but it does take 2 to 3 months for that review to come back. That's what we've been experiencing recently. So anyway, Apex is a very good contractor. We've worked with them on other projects. They did one of the pieces of Skyview at Block 49. So we have no problems. They were underneath the engineer's estimate, and we encourage the council to approve the contract. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. David.
So how long will it be till we get the other estimates? Any time frame on that?
Yeah, if you can.
Good evening. I'm Ken Lee with Garver. I'm not the design engineer on the project, but I've worked on the project. I've done QA QC, so I'm familiar with it, so I can talk about it a little bit. And so on the first question about the need to proceed ahead, the biggest issue we've seen when trying with water right now is as she mentioned, the KDHE reviews are slower on water than the sanitary sewer. We have the sanitary sewer approval. The other issue that we've run into is we install the cross street services with these projects, and on water lines that can sometimes take 12 to 14 weeks right now because the brass fittings in those are very hard to come by. And so we're in a situation that we wanted to go ahead and get the sewer going. If we do get the water out to bid, and we don't know when that is, but we have committed to Ann that we will not have a second contractor on the site. It will be just this contractor. The bid documents will be set up to where they can't start work until the other contractor is done. So did you have another question beyond that? Timing? Yeah. And so timing, what I would expect is when Chris and I discussed it, that we don't expect that the water would start construction at this point until probably February. And that'll actually work out okay if we get the water going. The paving can't start until really when you start working subgrade. You can't be in freezing weather temperatures when you're doing subgrade compaction. So it'll work out naturally to be more late spring before we want to be doing the grading compaction out there anyway.
So will we have to have locators out there to locate the sewer lines for the next contractor? Okay.
Well, they're supposed to mark all the services, so.
Okay.
I guess the other kind of good point is the sewer usually goes in first anyway. So.
Mr. Wells.
Yeah, I think you kind of answered my question, but my concern was that we were doing this too far ahead of when we would be able to construct houses, because the city's on the hook for that money until you get done and start selling houses and we get the specials assessed.
We're only talking a couple months as far as starting it, and the clock always starts when you do the first project anyway. So if we built them all, the plan is to roll them directly one after the other like they would have anyway. The difference is instead of having it just be one contractor, it'll be, and it could be the same contractor who bids on it, but it's not uncommon to do it broken apart into pieces like this. In fact, it used to be the way we always did it on larger projects like this. You would only do sewer, you would only do water, you'd only do storm sewer. Those would all normally be different projects. We have started bundling them, and it is better in general to bundle them when the timing allows it, because it does eliminate the confusion. But Ann did make it very clear to us that she was not going to allow other contractors on site. You can actually argue that it's better to do the sanitary sewer a month or two earlier, in the sense that the deeper trenches, they consolidate. So in yards and those kind of things, an extra couple months of consolidation can actually be a good thing when it comes to the sewer being installed. it's not uncommon to see a sewer trench drop a foot or two, maybe even more, depending on the situation. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, and you could argue that it's a good thing to give a little more time.
Well, the 2 months didn't bother me nearly as much as what I first thought when I heard that it was going to be a while. When I heard a while, I'm thinking 6 months or more. Yeah. And I didn't want a huge.
Yeah. And so what we'll end up doing on this project is we are planning on bidding water and water and storm sewer together. The grading activity will start. We'll get going on that. They'll start installing the water mains and the storm sewer with the plan of having those fittings ordered in by the time the project is getting to its completion. Those will be done towards the end of the project is what we'll hope to do there. And again, it's just one of those things that the developer doesn't want to lose time waiting for the water permit as much as anything else is really the biggest driver there.
Okay. I applaud him for trying to get done quickly.
Well, and if you guys are familiar with Mr. Vitarelli, he's done Rock Spring second, third, let's say. He's built a lot of homes here, and he's so looking forward to building a lot more. So.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to motion to accept the bid from Apex in the amount of $374,540 for Cedar Pass sanitary sewer improvements, phase 1, and authorize the mayor to sign all related documents.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Dean and second by Mr. Smith. Any additional discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item C is the developer at Chapel Landing is ready to proceed with paving improvements for phase 2, which were designed by Bauman Engineering. The cost of the improvements will be financed through a bond and spread as special assessments against the benefiting lots. 5 contractors submitted bids, and Ann is here to explain the project. Answer questions.
So this project sits between the Kilgore property in the council, or in the county, and the Homestead Senior Living. It's a very small portion of the original Chapel Landing project. They are getting ready to move forward. The contractor is going to be starting the water and sewer on the 27th and getting that moving forward. So they did want to go ahead and take the bids so the bids can get on the contractor's schedule. The start date it is not going to be immediately. We're not going to let them start until the water and sewer is in to prevent any issues with contractors being in each other's way. But this at least gets the project on the schedule. And we've hoped sometimes you have to do that in hopes of getting better bids instead of getting the project out, having contractors' schedules booked, and then having bids be quite a bit higher. So that's why it's bid now, even though it's not quite ready yet. Discussions have been underway for contractors to understand that it's not going to be an immediate project.
But it's only not ready because the other work hasn't been completed, right?
That is correct.
The design is ready.
The design is ready. The design is done. If it wasn't, it would not have been bid out. But yes, it's just the site is not ready because of the other contractors.
Thanks for clarification.
When do you anticipate it starting?
I would say it would probably start maybe the end of November, early December, if not kind of moving into next year. That's kind of, and then the concrete versus asphalt. Asphalt, there is temperature requirements. Concrete, there is also temperature requirements. If you want to pour when it's colder out, you have to have heated water. You have to have blankets covering the entirety of the concrete that's poured. That's why we have the inspections out there. The inspector's very good at, keeping track of all that, as our contractors, because they don't want to tear it out.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean.
I'd like to, at this time, abstain from vote on or any discussion related to this.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean, David.
I'll make a motion to accept the bid for paving from Pearson in the amount of $475,791 for Chapel Landing Phase 2 paving, and authorize the mayor to sign all related documents.
Motion from Mr. David. Any second? Hearing no second, that motion will fail. Assume there's additional discussion to be had.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to accept the bid for concrete paving from Prado in the amount of $607,372.50 for Chapel Landing Phase 2 paving.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and second by Mr. Welch to accept Prado for concrete. Any discussion on that issue? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any opposed? I hear no opposed, and I know Mr. Dean abstained, so the motion passes 4-0. With Mr. Dean abstaining. Go on to item D, change order request from Pearson Construction for some sidewalks. Developers requested additional sidewalk be installed in the drainage reserve between Rock Spring 3rd and Rock Spring 4th. This change order also includes funds for additional fill dirt. The cost of these improvements will be included in overall project cost, which will be financed through bond and spread as special assessments against the benefiting lots. And here to explain this project.
So there's two pieces to this. One is the additional fill dirt and the other is the additional sidewalk. Not entirely sure what happened on the fill dirt. I think there was just a bust somewhere with the compaction factor between the dirt that was available on site and then the dirt that was needed on site to bring everything up to grade. It does occasionally happen. The engineers do their best, but sometimes there's differences in the site, or something was just missed, that would have been in the bid documents if it had been caught prior to the bid. So it's not a huge error. It just adds to the specials. The developer is aware of it and understanding. The second issue is the additional sidewalk. There is a map on page 30 of your packet that shows where the additional sidewalk is going. This is a developer requested change. They have found in other developments that this particular area where it is in a reserve is somewhat difficult to maintain because there is not a homeowner maintaining that area directly. So they have to get their forces, HOA forces eventually to maintain this area. It is a fairly small area, 50 feet by 15 to 20 feet. So they have found that paving this with sidewalk type concrete just makes maintenance much easier. It leaves a much prettier look for the longer term. So they are requesting the additional sidewalk.
So question from Mr. Lasher or Ms. Kelly. Do we have a developer's agreement on this project that would express that they would maintain this type of a situation?
Yes, we have developers agreements for all of our developments that require them to maintain the sidewalk.
To maintain sidewalks?
Is that what you're for?
Well, this is Ann just explained that this would be something the HOA would have to maintain because it doesn't have any property adjacent to it or any property owners adjacent to it.
This would be, either the developer themselves, or if they turn it over to an HOA, then they would be responsible for
I
this
just want
area.
to make sure that we were covered in the developer's agreement, that was going to be the case, that they would maintain that.
So we are. The way the developers agreement works is until they get the HOA established, from the time the sidewalk goes in until the time the HOA takes over, that developer is responsible for any damage that would violate code. The developer is responsible for that.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or concerns?
Mayor, I can talk a little bit about the builder if you want, just to kind of get a clarification.
Yes, please. It would be good to know.
So Kenley with Garver again, not the design engineer on the project, but I worked with the guy who did. And so I talked with him a little about it when I saw the staff report here, because I wanted to make sure that if there was any questions on it, and Ann actually had it right when she talked about the difference between compaction and filling it when you're cutting and removing dirt. And we call it shrink swell. And we have assumptions we make, and most of the time you don't see this because most of our sites are large enough that if there's minor variations, you just tweak the grading and it doesn't matter. But on this site, we were very short on dirt. So when we made our assumption, we normally try to have about a 10 to 12% difference between our excavation and our fill to try and balance out that shrink swell. This is just one of those situations where the material type here didn't meet that, so we've ended up a little short on dirt, and so she was absolutely correct. That's what happened here, was just we make assumptions on that. We typically, this is the first one of these I've had in probably 5 or 6 years where we've had one where we ended up short on dirt, where we had to do a change order to bring in additional dirt. So normally the assumptions work well, but in this instance they didn't. So it is just really as simple as that as far as how it goes. And we've actually got contractors who are trying to get rid of dirt that we'll probably end up having them bring it in separately after the project's closed out to help fill in the lots even more, just because we've got some folks that are needing to get rid of dirt. But that's the best kind of dirt because it's free. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Hamburg.
make a motion to approve the change order request from Pearson Construction in the amount of $22,668,000 for Rock Spring 4th paving and authorize the mayor to sign all related documents.
I have a motion by Ms. Hamburg.
I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Welch. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. This motion carries 5-0. Item E. So this is repairing Webb Road adjacent to Rock Spring 4th. So during the construction of Rock Spring 4th subdivision, the shoulder of the Webb Road has been breaking up and is in need of repair. Now that the majority of the project has been completed, staff met on site with the contractor in Garver to determine the extent of damage and what needs to be replaced. So Ann is here to explain the project and answer questions.
So this is a similar situation to what we had over on 53rd Street with the Bristol Hollow subdivision. The road itself, the travel lanes, are fairly well engineered and not subject to as many issues as, 53rd Street. But the shoulder is a different story, and that would be the area from the white line onto the grass. That after all the damage has occurred, we went over there and looked at it, and it's about 2 inches of asphalt on just soil. There's typical section is more like 5 to 7 inches of asphalt with a 5-inch crushed rock base with geogrid underneath. That just has a much more stable section, provides for the loading. So because it was only 2 inches, I can't expect anybody to pay for that, the contractor to pay for that, because we didn't know what kind of section it was going into the project. When the county originally installed the road, they didn't know that we were going to have a subdivision here. They didn't know to make the shoulder any thicker than they normally do. So they did what normal people would do and make the thin shoulder and said, okay, well, if there's anything coming on in the 15, 20 plus years in the future, then I guess you fix it then. So that's where 15, 20 plus years in the future, and that's where we're at. I do have 2 costs in front of you today. One is there's 2 sections, the west shoulder north. That is the worst part that you're seeing in the picture on the left. And that is the really broken up part. The other is more on the picture on the right, where you see a lot of cracking. It's kind of a, do you want to fix it now or do you want to fix it later type of thing? My recommendation is we're out there now. Let's get it all done now, especially since we don't have this portion of Webb Road in our 5-year time frame. I would just like to see it get done, especially we know we've got home construction coming in. We've got more concrete trucks coming in with foundations and driveways, etc. I would rather not see this road degrade any further.
So your recommendation is to spend $67,000 to fix these two sections of the road?
That would be correct.
Okay. And then the edge marking for another 2,200?
That would be correct. That's something that our staff does have the ability to do, but it's not going to be as professional, as quality as what Pearson can do. So I would just assume have Pearson get the edge marking as well, because we just don't have the time,
And
our staff.
what area of budget were you proposing to do this work from?
This would be coming from the CIP.
In the CIP? Okay. I think I had asked Mr. Lasher to let us know year-to-date where we are on the CIP budget. Do you have that information for us?
Yes, Mayor. Since we're talking about this, and is the next item the street work we were going to do?
I think it is.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So the next two items, we can talk about that. So the 2022 CIP, we were budgeting, anticipating spending about 1.3 million on street preservation products. The bids for that, the low bid, I think came in at 1.18. So that's a savings of 166,000. So that's where we would suggest taking that 60-some thousand out of that 166,000 savings. Still leaves us with $100,000 savings. When we're looking at 2023, we were anticipating spending about 790,000 on street projects, preservation projects. We've got the bids in at 908. So that's overspending by about 118,000. So without taking that 67,000, we would have a net gain of about 48,000. So we'll lose some of that. So as we're looking at 2022, 2023 projects, which is what you're considering. So if you would accept actually all three of these, this improvement, F and G, we would have in 2023 a fund balance of about 200,000.
You still have 200,000 after you do all these?
Yep, all three.
All three?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, that's good information. Thank you for collecting that.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
Pearson is the same contractor that's doing Woodlawn for us. If we have them do this, is this going to detract from our Woodlawn progress in any way?
Yes, they are the same contractor. No, it should not, because it's a completely separate crew.
So this is the contractor who's doing the other work on this development, right?
That is correct.
Okay. That's what I thought we had, but I want to be sure we talked the same. Okay, very good.
And quick question. Is this considered an emergency situation? What was the reasoning behind just taking a quote from Pearson instead of going out and getting multiple prices? Unless I missed it, I don't see other prices. It's just their quote, right?
Correct. Since Pearson is the contractor working on the project, they're there. They have to bring in equipment to do the sidewalk.
Right.
And then us finish the fill dirt. So they have the equipment on site. And so that is why we chose just to work with them on this project.
They still have the equipment on site?
They have some on site,
Yeah.
yes, but they will be bringing the rest of it back for the sidewalk as well as the fill dirt.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So are we getting a better deal because it's already on site, or?
We're getting, yes, the prices are according to the contract prices. So it's not, they haven't inflated it. It was evaluated by Garver and they were satisfied as to the fairness of it. We're not getting gouged.
So after doing this work, will this section of this road, I know it's not a big section, but this section of this road, will it be equivalent to the existing road, the rest of the road, or will it be superior in some respect to the rest of the road?
So,
I think it's gonna be kind of equivalent to maybe a little bit superior.
well, what it will be replaced with is equivalent to what you'd normally do for the residential roadway. So the traffic going in and out of the neighborhood, the normal home construction and residential traffic, designing a section that will be up to that standard. As far as, comparing it to, a major arterial standard, it's probably a couple inches thinner than that would be, but it would be a normal residential standard for the road base there. It'll be far superior to what's there today in the shoulder area though. So we won't have the same failures you're seeing in the shoulder. Does that answer the question?
I think it does. But there's still homes to be built in this area. We're only just getting done with the sewer and water and streets, right? That's all that's being done so far. So there's going to be a lot more trucks in and out of this area, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And the pavement section that we are proposing will hold up to all that traffic. It's the same pavement section that we're using in all the other residential districts that have trucks, large trucks coming in and out, garbage trucks, delivery trucks, etc.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
one other question or note I wanted to make, Ann, and this isn't necessarily feasible, but generally haul routes, just so everybody understands, on major projects, usually haul routes are established so the contractors understand what the preferred or ideal roadway to drive on for heavy truck traffic. Problem, like Ann described, is that this was a county road built 20 years ago. So we can't expect any of these roads on these new subdivisions that we're building are going to all probably start having similar challenges, I assume. And there's probably nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, depending on where it is, yes, because 53rd, we all know, is an issue. It's got to be addressed. This road, we really didn't anticipate it. We had the Tierra Verde subdivision that went in with similar stuff, and we didn't have the problems off of Woodlawn, but that was a much longer stretch. Why the difference, I'm not sure. But yeah, we weren't anticipating the problems with this road. So I don't know if the shoulder was different quality construction, different makeup construction in this area versus Tierra Verde just north. I'm not sure why, but it's here.
I mean, ideally, we would know of a road that was superior and we could say, use this specific road. That's the haul route to avoid stuff like this. But I don't think we're going to have the benefit where all of our subdivisions are being built are along these older arterial streets. So I just wanted to throw that out there so council understands. I'm thinking this is going to be a future issue we're going to have. It's not going away.
Yeah, that is correct. In the initial phase of the Rock Springs subdivision, we did specify a haul route. You need to enter from this portion of 53rd and not that portion of 53rd to help preserve the road.
It's the best we can do.
Yes.
Any other questions or discussions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
do we know the total dollar amount on this contract? It doesn't look like it's added up. There's the north line item and the south line item. I have to pull out a calculator to add that up.
Yeah,
Plus the ed marking.
Justin, I did add it up. So the numbers do add up. You add up the 2,200 for the striping, and then you deduct. There's a 2,500 deduct on traffic control, and I come up to the number that Ann has suggested of, what was it, 64,988. Okay.
You said 64,988? 998.
988.
All right. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to accept the quote from Pearson Construction in the amount of $64,998 for repairs to Webb Road and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion for Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Dean. Any additional questions or discussion?
You said 998, right? 98.
Am I $10 off?
I think
Not to exceed.
Very good. Okay.
I heard you say 9088, so I don't. Brain inserted the right number or what?
Okay.
988.
Not to
I have a
exceed.
motion and a second. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item F is street repairs for 2022 projects were discussed by council, PEC, and staff at an earlier workshop. PEC created a list of street repairs for 2022 with a $1.4 million budget. The improvements included microsurfacing and pavement and curb repair. Staff contacted the city of Wichita for a list of street vendors they used. 3 companies were contacted for bids and only 2 responded for the pavement and curb repair project. The bids for both microsurfacing and pavement and curb repair came in above PEC estimates and the amount budgeted, and is here to discuss both projects and answer questions.
I'm actually going to turn this over to Luke Peter, who did a vast majority of the street evaluation work as well as the preparation of these bid documents and the project itself. He has a short presentation for you, so I will turn this over to
Maybe the
Luke.
presentation will answer my questions then.
Thanks for the time. I was here some months back presenting the 10-year street maintenance plan. So just kind of bring you up to speed on how it's developed, obviously at bid. So I'll just give you more information and background. So this is kind of where we left off from the pavement evaluation, looking at Bel Aire as a whole. This was our year 1 plan, split into 2 projects, doing patching in several of the neighborhoods, and then a microsurfacing project to a couple neighborhoods and along Oliver. So we were trying to stay within that $1.4 million budget, and the project evolves, and we'll get into some of the reasons and some stuff that got added to get that final bid price that we're looking at. That was over the $1.4 million estimate. So we actually went out and collected all the areas that needed patching, curb repair, valley gutter repair. So you're seeing here is the Lawn Terrace neighborhood. You can see all the areas there. I'll go briefly through this, but if you want to look at it more in depth, we have all this data on a website if the council wants to review specific locations. So here we have the Pearsons and North Woodlawn neighborhood. You can see a lot more curb repair in this neighborhood. Then just south, the Bel Aire Village and Quail Ridge neighborhoods. And then across Woodlawn, the Bowers subdivision there. So those were all the neighborhoods that were getting the pavement and curb repairs. And then this is the separate project that was doing the scrub seal and microsurfacing treatments to those 2 neighborhoods and along Oliver. And we touched on a little bit the last time I presented, but just to give you a little more background on the scrub seal and microsurfacing treatments. So a scrub seal, to put it simply, it's kind of just a mass crack sealing treatment over the whole road. So on the left, you've probably seen streets like this where it's just a maze of crack sealant. While that is effective, it's not necessarily aesthetically pleasing, and you can still miss some smaller cracks along the way. So a scrub seal, crack sealing along the whole road, with the idea that it's kind of prepping or priming the road for the microsurfacing treatment. So this is kind of a simple diagram of how that microsurfacing treatment works. Mixture of aggregate water and some emulsion comes out of the machine as a brown mixture. So just warning, you might get calls. Why is it sitting, putting brown pavement down? Just tell them to wait an hour and it will turn black. And then the benefit of microsurfacing is there's little downtime. You'll be able to drive on the road 1 to 2 hours after it's in place. So that is one of the benefits we considered. On the top right there is kind of how it comes out of the machine, looking brown like I mentioned. And then those 2 pictures on the left and the middle are some streets that have been microsurfaced in Wichita, actually close to where I live. These were done, I think, this past spring. So you can kind of get a sense of how it looks. Kind of to the naked eye or to the public eye, it looks like new pavement. You don't have the issues of loose aggregate all over the place with a chip seal. And it's not as messy and it's not as streaky as a slurry seal treatment. So that's why we ended up picking the microsurfacing treatment and trying it for the first time in Bel Aire, or my understanding, for the first time. And most municipalities are trending towards using the microsurfacing. And I think the main reason is because it does look and feel like new pavement, as some of those other treatments have some downsides, like I mentioned. So back to this year one, we were trying to do all this work under the $1.4 million budget. And this was pretty high level estimating. For all that patching, we were anticipating doing 5 to 15% of patching in those neighborhoods. But until we're actually out there and marking out those areas, we don't know for sure what the quantity is going to be. And along with that, we did add some things, which we'll get into a little later. So a summary of the comparison of the bid price to what we had initially estimated. You can see we sent plans to 6 paving contractors for the pavement and curb repair project. Only 2 responded with bids, Pearson and Kansas Paving. Kansas Paving was the lowest bidder. And then we sent 2 plans for the microsurfacing to 2 microsurfacing contractors. They do most of the work in the Kansas region. And Vance Brothers was the low bidder there. So some design assumption that we had gone into to get to that $1.355 million number. We were assuming just doing asphalt repairs only. And I believe at the council meeting when I was last here, it was recommended from the council to add curb and gutter repairs, which makes total sense. If we're in the neighborhood doing repairs, it makes sense to add those. But it does come at a cost, and that added around $150K to that number. We were also anticipating just doing the microsurfacing treatments in the neighborhood streets, and then the city would come in and do some crack sealing. We would still do the scrub seal and the microsurfacing on the arterials, but our assumption was just the microsurfacing with city done crack sealing. But however, with discussions with the city, Ty and Ann, we wanted to add doing both the scrub seal and microsurfacing to all 3 of those areas, the 2 subdivisions and Oliver Road. Obviously, it comes at a cost around $200,000. Ended up being adding that scrub sealing into those neighborhood streets. And then we also added bike lanes on Oliver. Smaller costs in relationship to the other 2, but since we were kind of repaving Oliver, going to have to replace the pavement markings anyways. The city wanted to utilize those existing shoulders and mark it out for bike lanes.
So this proposal is to do the surfacing of Oliver?
Yes, we'll get into that.
Okay.
Just give me some time. So if you add those costs, we get into closer to the $1.7 million range, which is still under what it bid for. And we can attribute that to just the rising prices, limited contractor availability for this type of work, and then just the difference of our planning quantities versus the actual quantities. So some alternatives we can look at to kind of reduce the cost and get the number down to whatever it needs to be. Like I said, we can take out the scrub seal from those 2 neighborhood streets.
Which ones? Can you go back and show that?
Yeah. It would be, I think it's Arthur Heights and then Bel Aire Village. So we would still do some crack sealing in there before the microsurfacing, but we would just take out the scrub seal treatment.
Would you still do the microsurfacing?
Yes.
Without the scrub seal?
Yes. And like I mentioned, the scrub seal is pretty much just a crack sealing treatment. It gets the entire road. It would be better to do that, but it's not necessary. So it's just kind of, and the scrub sealing bids did come in a little bit higher than we anticipated. Not sure why that is, but just keep that in mind. So if we did that, it'd get us down to around 1.9 million. That kind of explains it there. Then we could also look at pulling some of the pavement and curve repairs. The Bel Aire subdivision would likely be the one we would suggest to take out. If we took that out from the pavement and curb repair project, it would save around 115,000, get us down to $1.8 million. And then this is that Bel Aire subdivision. Pick this just because it's east of Woodlawn. All of these homeowners are having to deal with that Woodlawn construction. So if you're going to pick any of those subdivisions, this would likely be the candidate, and save it for another year. The benefit of
What are the street? I'm not familiar with that term, Bauer subdivision. So
so it's just
one
east
off
of
streets.
Woodlawn. Let's see if we can go back.
just north of railroad tracks.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's rodeo and such. Okay.
Yeah, so all those drives now are under construction. So just, and we can pull any of the other subdivisions, just our recommendation. And then alternative 3 would just be to award the pavement and curb repair project. We could look at adding to that project. It sounds like we could add that Webb, those Webb repairs that we just mentioned. Some other things we could look at, adding South Edgemore repairs, and the roundabouts out here, and then hold the microsurfacing project until next year. Vance Brothers verbally stated that they would hold their bids until the start of the year, not much longer after that. So a decision would need to be made at the start of next year if we were to move forward with that, or we would have to rebid it. So if we wanted to add something, South Edgemore would be our suggestion. There's 3 or 4 transverse cracks there that are pretty severe and give you a good, as you drive past them. And Edgemore's getting a lot of traffic now because a lot of residents are avoiding the Woodlawn construction. So we could look at adding those repairs to get closer to that 1.4 number that we had budgeted. So that's kind of all the text as fast as I could. Didn't want to take too much of your time. So it's kind of just open for discussion. And if Ty wanted to give any more information about the budget and what we have to
So
work
what's
with.
in our packet here? There's a Kansas paving for 1.188 and Vance Brothers for 908,000.
Yep.
And you went through all these different scenarios. Which one is that that's in the packet?
So it's 2 separate projects, the pavement and curb repair and the microsurfacing project. Both we were trying to get within the year one, $1.4 million. Maybe Ann can.
Well, that's more than 1.4 million.
So what is in the packet is that 2.096. That is the bid for Kansas Paving for the entirety of the pavement and curb repair project. And then the second motion is the bid from Vance Brothers for the microsurfacing and scrub seal treatment. So that is what is in your packet. Your decision today is how much do you want to spend? One of the things that we could do, as Luke mentioned, was table the bid for the microsurfacing until the January 3rd meeting in 2023. That would allow those funds to be coming out of the 2023 CIP project or CIP funds, which Ty had mentioned there was, I think, 790,000 that we had earmarked for that. But due to some savings with the 2022 pavement and curb repair project, that could be transferred into the 2023 year.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
So all the options that we saw, those were just options to take scope out of this $2 million scope in order to reduce the price.
That is correct. And what we would end up doing would be if council chose to remove Bowers Addition or the scrub seal or some of the other projects that Luke had talked about, that would be done as a change order. We would accept the project as it is and then change order those out.
The $2 million gets it all. If we don't want to spend $2 million, pick an option to get the price down.
That is correct.
Got it.
In my mind, the only thing that makes sense to pull out of this project would be Bowers Addition. I don't see the sense in doing that when Woodlawn's not going to be done for another year. I mean, it's just this. I would just pull my hair out if I was the residents over there.
I don't disagree.
Mr. Mayor, I I had a clarification. So on the bid packet, the two engineers' estimates, 975, 965 for the pavement and curb repair, and then the microsurfacing of 692 actually totals 1,668,255. I assume that includes the scope add that you had discussed, the curb, all that stuff is kind of what's increased the engineer's estimate portion of those.
Yeah, and the engineering estimate was pretty optimistic, knowing that we needed to stay within the 1.4. So we figured it was going to overbid. We just weren't sure by how much.
Yeah.
So we knew we were going to be here and have to explain ourselves. But
Yeah. So two questions to follow up. The quantity that you guys measured, do you have an estimate of how much that went over? Was it 25%? Do you have an idea?
that's a good question. I'll have to go back and look, and I can supply that because that would be interesting data to have for sure.
And then the second question is, you made the comment that lots of cities are choosing to do the microsurfacing and other preservation techniques. Are quantities small enough that these microsurface companies, we've only gotten two bids on the curb and gutter, or the pavement and curb repairs. What size of quantity projects are occurring in the Wichita Metro? Are we on the smaller side? Do you think that's hurting our ability to attract a better price or competition?
I think slightly. Wichita bids around 500,000 square yards. We bid around 125,000.
Right.
But just looking at the microsurfacing number, it was still relative to what Wichita gets. So I would say, I mean, it's not terrible. The scrub seal number did come in pretty high. Wichita doesn't typically do scrub seal or doesn't require it on all their streets that get microsurfacing. So that one I don't have as much data on, but
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
do we know if we did the slurry seal instead of the microsurfacing, what the cost difference would be, and would that put us back in budget?
it would be slightly less expensive, just knowing that slurry seals are less expensive than microsurfacing. But without rebidding it, I don't know for sure. I haven't seen any recent bids for slurry seal, so I don't know what it bids for. Maybe you have some experience.
I know that's the approach we took last year, and we talked about evaluating different alternatives because there are some aesthetic things. But my understanding was that from a preservation perspective, they seemed about the same to me. I'm not an engineer, so you guys will have to help me, but they seemed similar. And so I guess I'm just trying to understand, are we going to go way over budget here just for a little bit of aesthetics? And if so, maybe we need to reevaluate that.
So we did not look at what the potential cost of a slurry seal would be over this same area. That was not something that we had. I mean, I'm happy to look at what we got for bids last year, and Luke can pull up some recent ones and we can bring that back to you at your next meeting if you would like. When we're choosing different treatments, there's always a lot of options and different things you bring into. We had a lot of complaints over the aesthetics, the quality of the construction, the overspray of the slurry seal, the roughness of the finished product, which does tend to go away with use. But we had a lot of citizens concerned about children playing, riding bikes, et cetera, on that slurry seal, skinning knees, et cetera, et cetera. So for those reasons, we wanted to try out this microsurfacing and see if that's not a better product. So that it's kind of a twofold thing. It does look a lot better. It does look like a brand new street. So council, I would assume, would be getting kudos for replacing my street. But even though that's not quite what we're doing, but to the average citizen, you don't always know what goes into it. But I kind of back into that microsurfacing, I really strongly recommend that we keep the scrub seal in the project. It'll not only seal the larger cracks, it seals those smaller cracks that will eventually turn into larger cracks. So that was why I strongly recommended we do the scrub seal even in advance of the microsurfacing, even though others do not. Another product that we have used in the past that Mr. Mayor had referenced in an email to myself and Ty was the Reclamite. We did that on Rock Springs. We did that on Elk Creek. We did that in Central Park. since it's a clear product, it's really difficult to tell the viability. How good was it? Haven't seen a whole lot of difference in Central Park because they're older streets. What it is supposed to do is put the oils back into the pavement and help it last longer. But until you have controls or small areas that did not get the the reclamite treatment, it's really difficult to tell, especially if it's clear. When that product goes down 2 days later, you couldn't even tell that the city did anything. And so that's hard for me to continue to recommend when I can't tell anything was done. I don't see controls. I can't tell, especially over a long term, it may make more of a difference, but in a short term time frame, it probably was beneficial, but how much?
We did
That's
those
kind of my
3 years
question.
ago with a road that hadn't had that treatment in that 3-year period. How's it compared to that? Do we know?
Problem
do
is we
finish that?
treated all of the areas that needed to be treated.
Okay, so we don't have
So that we really
any
don't
road
have any
beds to compare it
controls.
to. Okay.
Right. So it was a good thing to do, but it's kind of, hindsight's 2020. Maybe we should have left like a piece of paper, a 3x3 area that wasn't treated so we could truly evaluate how things were done. But, we didn't think about that at the time.
So, question on this microsurface treatment, because we've not done this one before. How long do we anticipate it lasting?
They usually say around 5 to 9 years. So
Okay.
it's a pretty broad range. It just kind of depends on what pavement it's going on top of.
And what do you do after the 5 to 9 years? What's the next step?
You
Is
just
it
kind of restart the
redoing
cycle of crack sealing and
crack
then
sealing
kind
and
of
another
evaluate
microsurface?
from there.
So this is adding some layer to the road?
A very
Okay.
thin layer. I
Yeah,
forget what
so
the actual
what,
thickness is.
an inch or is it more than that?
It's, yeah, quarter inch, half inch at the most.
Really?
Yeah.
Does it pick up any of the material from the road? Is it laid, or is it just clearly right on top of whatever's there?
Yeah, it's just right on top of whatever's there.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean?
visiting Burkamp today in Salina, who makes machines that do microsurfacing, they were sharing stats. So I was going to kind of corroborate what he said. They were talking about their approach to microsurfacing. They estimate about 8 years, whereas compared to mill and overlay, which is kind of what you're trying to preserve, so you don't have to do a full depth mill and overlay. And they usually estimate about 11 years of time on that, but for a much more expensive investment. So 8 years is kind of what Burkamp, the company we visited today, said. So that's kind of right in that range.
When we first started talking about microsurfacing, I think you were worried, Ann, that it didn't look like it was working right in Wichita. Some of it was coming back up or something. It wasn't adhering good.
There's some locations particularly on Rock Road, which is what I drive the most, that there was some patch areas that had lifted up. After further talking to the city of Wichita, they mentioned that those areas were not completely prepared as well as they would like. We did sign a contract with PEC for construction observation on this project, so they can help us. But there's, sometimes the road is not a uniform surface, so we may experience some of that and we may not. Hopefully we won't. It's the only perfect solution is tear it out and redo it, but that's very cost prohibitive.
That fails over time too. So
Exactly.
well, my preference on this would be that we do just the curb and pavement repairs and eliminate the section east of Woodlawn and not add Edgemore until we're done with heavy traffic down Edgemore.
So
I don't know where that
does
leaves
that-
us on bidding it.
Yeah, did I hear you're putting bike lanes along Oliver? Is that correct? This is what's in
Where
yeah.
the shoulder on Oliver is wide enough
Mhm.
that it can be considered a bike lane.
Okay.
So we're
So
just
that's-
putting the paint markings down to signify that that is a location for bikes.
We would do that obviously after you do a microsurface. Is that what
Correct.
you're suggesting?
Correct.
You're going to do microsurface the entire route of Oliver from 37th to 53rd?
Um,
Yeah,
Yep.
that's the plan.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know. So, cool.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I think it makes sense to for sure go forward with that pavement and curb repairs. Personally, I think it would make sense to understand the alternative cost on the microsurfacing, just so that we have a data point before we move forward with that. I think that it's probably the right thing to do, but if the slurry seal were half price, that might change our opinion. And so I think we should know, or at least get an engineer's estimate on what that would look like before we move forward. And the other comment I have is that since these estimates came in quite a bit higher than our engineer's estimates, and we have this 5-year plan, I'd like to know, can we go back and adjust our estimates accordingly and understand where that kind of lays out our updated 5-year plans so that we have better budgetary numbers for the future years?
Yeah, I can look into how our quantities or planning quantities compared to what we actually repaired. So give
Awesome.
you more information.
I think you might also be talking about the inflation factor, right? Not
What?
just the plant quantities, but inflation factor too.
All of the contributors to the
All
to the wrongness.
Yeah, it could change tomorrow, but I agree. Updating it would be good.
Okay.
It's probably not going to get cheaper. So
So just to kind of clarify where we are, I'm hearing, and I know I suggested removing Bowers from the project, from the microsurfacing, but also hearing maybe we want to table microsurfacing to give Ann a chance to go back and see what slurry seal would be. And I'm hearing that in item F, and we're kind of combining F and G together, but in item F, are we wanting to change that at all, or would you leave it the way it's proposed?
Well, we were saying we'd take out Bowers, I think. because
But
we
Bowers
didn't-
isn't in F, is that correct? It's only in G. Is that a correct statement? I
No.
make sure I'm right about that.
Bowers addition is included in item F. So
But
if
not G.
that is correct. So if it's the council's desire to remove Bowers, you would motion to approve the contract with Kansas Paving with a forthcoming change order that would remove the work in Bowers addition.
Oh, so Bowers is in item F.
That is correct.
Okay.
Because it is the pavement and curb repair.
Oh, there's pavement curve repair. Is there microsurfing in Bowers as well?
Not at this time,
Okay.
no.
All right, that's what want to make sure I was clear.
Because we figured that we understand it's right next to Woodlawn. They're putting up with a bunch of stuff. You can deal with a week of patch repair you can still get into your house, your neighborhood, but you may have to swerve out and around. None of these are full width across the street repairs. It's more of it's an inconvenience, which I do understand, but it's maybe 1 or 2 people affected if we have to do curb repairs right through somebody's driveway. And so we figured that was a more palatable inconvenience than having to shut an entire street down for 5 to 6 hours, whatever it takes to do the microsurfacing. So that was kind of where we made the decision to include it. I 100% understand choosing not to and waiting and for a future year. That makes a lot of sense as well.
When would it get done? I guess, if Bowers wasn't going to get done till August, September timeframe next year, it might not be really an inconvenience to solve because we really hope Woodlawn's finished by then.
Right. We don't really have an estimate. Have you talked with Kansas Paving as far as time frame?
In our contract, we have completion date by end of June of next year. So that's when they're planning on wrapping up all of the pavement and curb repair.
Well, currently, would they even have, and I don't know, would they be able to get their equipment into Bowers? Even with the road the way it is today?
Yeah, they could, because they're generally going to be using a skid steer to help remove pavement saws. These are fairly small. It's mostly handwork. They'll use a small compactor. So it's stuff that can be brought in on a pickup truck and a trailer.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Mayor, one quick clarification though. What was the Bowers amount? Like I'm looking at the two bids we got, and the second bid is quite a bit higher. Like it's $300,000 higher. So if we go back to Kansas Paving and ask for a change order to take out Bowers, what is the savings? What are we expecting?
114,000.
Okay.
If you took out the Bowers.
And you're confident that that's what the change order would be, a deduct of 114.
Yes.
Okay. I just don't want us to sit here and risk that basically rebidding a project for. I want us to be careful of that. Sometimes cities get into that situation where they're rebidding things that you're just removing small little things, and it might not be a benefit.
And knowing that the scope of the project is a little different than I was thinking earlier when I said we should remove Bowers, I'm
Right.
not so sure that we need to do that now. I understand what the project is a little better. So,
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
if we did approve it and say, hey, let's get a change order for Bowers, and they only shaved off $50,
Right.
we wouldn't have to approve that change order, right?
That's correct.
That's what I was going to get.
So
Yeah.
we can wait and see if we approve the change order.
But you would also be on the hook if you approve this contract. You would be on the hook for the whole 100 and
Yep.
or $1.188 million. The change order, yes or no?
We'd be locked into doing Bowers. So
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to accept the bid from Kansas Paving in an amount not to exceed $1,188,540.75 for the 2022 pavement and curb repairs, and request a change order to remove Bowers and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Dean. Any additional discussion?
Yeah, I think at this point I'd leave Bowers in after everything we've talked about.
Okay, so,
But we still have the option to do that when he sees change.
But we do have a motion in a second, so now we have
Yep.
to deal with that.
Mr. Mayor,
that's true. Yes.
I was just going to comment, my thought with requesting the change order is that brings the change order to us and we can see what the reduction amount is, and then we can decide if it's worth it, because the motion is to approve the full amount, not to exceed that, which effectively defers the Bowers decision, in my opinion, until we see the change order. I'd like to make sure that's a correct understanding.
What I heard was if we approve the 1.1, we pay that whether we have Bowers in or not. Is that true or not?
You are approving the entire contract, which includes Bowers. As Mr. Smith had said, we will bring a change order back to you to remove Bowers from the project. And then it will be your choice at that time when you have the change order, whether to include it or whether to take it out of the project. At this point it is included.
Okay, I wasn't clear there, I guess. Okay, I'm good.
Okay. Any additional discussion? The motion on the table is to accept Kansas Paving bid for $1.188 million with the understanding that we're going to see a change order to remove Bowers. I'm summarizing, not quoting it verbatim. So no further discussion. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item G is the microsurfacing. From discussion, it sounds like maybe we want to table this until we hear other bids and other options, or at least estimates, not necessarily bids, but estimates of what those would be.
What would be the end of the table? How long would we table it for?
My suggestion would be until the January 3rd, 2023 meeting. Ms. Kelly can correct me, but I believe you could bring it off a table earlier.
Yeah, you can bring it off the table whenever you have enough votes for it. But I want to make sure that the bids for the micro sealing are good until that date. The current bids are.
Yes, they are. We've had conversations with Vance Brothers, and they are willing to hold their bid until that time, January 3rd of 2023.
Quick clarification, would Vance Brothers also be bidding the slurry seal, or would there be a different, do they do slurry seal? Would it be a decision, but
I believe they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to table this until January 3rd with the understanding we could pouring it in if you come up with information sooner
And
to present.
we can certainly bring back to you at the next meeting the costs for the others. So if you wanted it to table it until the next meeting and then table it again, that would be
Yeah.
possible. Ted did request that any tabling or any movement on this item be worked into the 2023 budget with the CIP.
So if we even if we approved it today, it would be with the provision that it wouldn't be done until 2023.
Ted asked that it be tabled until the January 3rd
Oh, he wants
meeting
it tabled to January 3rd regardless.
because we cannot obligate funds in 2022 for the 2023 calendar year.
So yeah, Mayor, Ted and I are requesting that if you're going to take any action, it'd be after the first of the year. Reason being, once you would approve it, then that's being obligated in that year. So that'd be 2022. And right now we've got roughly 1.5 million available. So if you would approve both of these, you'd be at almost 2 million. So you would spend more than what we have available.
So
Now, you could say from a checkbook standpoint, but we're not going to write these checks till next year. But when the auditors and the state statutes, they look at calendar years, budget years, and they would say you obligated $2 million and you only had 1.5 available. So it would
then
require.
we have to change the budget.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
So,
don't worry
but
about that.
I think it sounds like it would work out fine because then Ann could do some more work for you so that in the first meeting in January, you'd have maybe a couple decisions to make.
Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion to table item G.
I'll make a motion to table item G to our January 3rd meeting.
Second.
2023,
Yes.
just to be.
Okay, so I have a motion from Mr. Smith to table until January 3rd, 2023, and a second by Ms. Hamburg. Any other discussion? Hearing
Mr.
none.
Smith, I'm sorry, would you mind amending that motion to table until the first meeting in January? Or, well, I don't know if maybe that's contingent on a specific date. They wanted.
It was intended to be the first meeting in January. I may or may not have the date correct. So
Okay.
I would, yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you, Jackie.
January 3rd is the first meeting unless something happens.
It's just better to do it for the first meeting because if something happens or if you decide to move the meeting or if we need to have any,
Right,
We have-
understood.
I amend my motion.
thank you. It's just
Second.
So the first meeting in 2023. Very good. I have a motion to table item G to the first meeting in 2023 by Mr. Smith and seconded by Ms. Hamburg. Any additional questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Executive session, I have no need for executive session. Does anyone else have a need for one? Hearing none, I'll move on to discussion and future issues, additional items to discuss or future issues to mention. I guess we'll move on to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Welsh and second by Mr. David. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. We do have a land bank